everyone, and welcome back to the Smart Tea podcast, where we talk about the lives of scientists and innovators who shape the world. I'm Aarti.
And I'm her mom, Jyoti.
So, Mom, quick correction before we get into today's episode. I posted a couple of shorts from our episode on Carlos Finlay, the doctor who figured out that mosquitoes were a vector for yellow fever. And in that episode, I was talking about how the USS Maine blew up.
Oh, yes. I remember that cute little ditty. Remember the Maine, down with Spain. I remember that. Yes.
Yeah, to hell with Spain.
To hell with Spain. Yes.
In that episode, I said that Spain took credit for the attack, but actually, our lovely viewers pointed out that I was mistaken about that. It turned out that it was actually a fire that started on board the ship and reached some ammunition stores, and then the ship exploded. And the U.S. pinned it on Spain. Or some people, even conspirators, say that the U.S. blew up their own ship, which I'm not sure about. I don't know enough about it. But regardless, it wasn't Spain's fault. Spain did not take credit for it, but the U.S. did use it to stir up tensions, and they created this propaganda.
I can see the whole situation stirring up the pot pretty badly.
Yes. And 100 years later or something, I'm embarrassed to say, even I fell for the propaganda. So I'm very sorry about that.
I can see how it could be used to foment discord. I can see that.
Yes. So thank you to our viewers for being my fact checkers.
Thank you, because then we are learning.
Okay. So for today's story, it is Pride Month. And you know how much I love doing a scientist that's on theme with, what's happening. And so I was thinking about it, and I was like, I don't think we've actually done any scientists from the LGBTQIA plus community. So today we are going to be doing the story of Alan Hart, who is a transgender man who became this pioneering doctor in tuberculosis.
Oh, nice. Okay. Tuberculosis is so rampant all over the world, and people can go around for years and years without knowing that it's present, and they can just be silent carriers of it and silent spreaders of it. It's a really horrendous one.
Yes, and that is exactly what we'll be talking about today, his work in asymptomatic TB and detecting it. But his life is very interesting as well, his personal life. It's a bit of a difficult one, but he really was truly amazing in the struggles that he faced. Alan was born on October 4th, 1890, in Halls Summit, Kansas. Biologically, he was born a female, and so he was initially given the name Alberta Lucille Hart.
Okay.
His father, Albert, died from typhoid fever before Alan was even 2 years old. And even at this very young age, Alan started saying to his mother that now that his father had died, he would take on the role of man of the house and take care of her.
At 2?
Yes.
Oh, that's quite shocking. I just wonder how a 2-year-old would have those kind of thoughts.
I'm sure it was very cute and very since we have no dad, now I'm the dad. Something like that he probably would have said.
I'm sorry, but I feel somebody fed that idea to him. Somebody must have said, well, you're the little man. Now you're the man, something like that.
I mean, but his mom was still treating him as a female at this point, as a little girl. So I don't know who would have fed him that idea at this point.
You're right. Oh, goodness. I'm getting confused already. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry about this. But
no,
Aarti,
it's okay. This is good. No, because I think a lot of people do get confused.
So wait a second. This is a little 2-year-old girl at this point.
Biologically, yeah.
What the world is saying is a little 2-year-old girl at this point who is going around saying that she's now the man of the house since her dad is no more.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, so very early on, this child is already identifying as male.
Already that masculine energy is coming out. Yes. And I want to be clear also that I am using male pronouns the entire time I'm telling the story. I'm using he and him the whole time.
Yeah.
But there are accounts that refer to him as she and her before
Uh-huh.
they made the transition to him and he. So,
I
but
got it. Okay.
I'm doing it because he always identified as male. He always was
Yes.
a male, and so even though at this young age the world was perceiving him as a girl and as a female, I'm using the pronouns he and him because he himself identified as a male.
And 2 years old is roughly around the time that they are able to speak and share their thoughts in a lucid way. So
Yes.
basically, from the very beginning of thought process in this child, the child
Hmm.
is identifying as male.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay. Got it. Got it. Now I'm with you. In the Hindu scriptures, there are various books and works that lay out the values that we should follow in life.
Hmm.
And there are some, very high level books like the Bhagavad Gita, for example, that just teach you here's the value, here's what you have to do, kind of thing. But then people get bored of just being preached upon, basically. So the same values have been presented in the form of very dramatic stories. And one of the dramatic stories in the Hindu literature is the Mahabharata. And the Mahabharata covers gender fluidity, where there is
Hmm.
this very young girl who is born to a king. And from the very beginning, he dresses as a boy, talks like a boy, acts like a boy, goes out to learn all the things with other warriors. At some point, he even leaves home. And then there is, I think, even in those days, there were almost like there were secret doctors who knew the methods and the medicines to change gender. So
Yes.
this gender fluid boy comes back home as a man. This is a story that is set 5,000 years ago. And this is
Hmm.
the first time I am getting to hear of a story where a 2-year-old child is already identifying as the other gender.
Yeah, I think that's important though, because you often hear people say, why are there so many transgender people all of a sudden? Why are there so many gay
Yes,
people all of a sudden? It wasn't like this before. And it's like, no, it was always like this. Even
it was
5,000
always
years
there.
ago, it was like
Yeah,
this. But because society,
yeah,
they hid or
repressed it.
they were not as
Yes,
open about it. And so
yes,
Alan's life was very hard. He fought
yeah.
against it, but someone who wasn't as strong as him would probably have somehow repressed it. So,
Wow, this is just tying so many things together in my head with connecting these old 5,000-year-old tales that I grew up with. But then, when I grew up with it as a child, I just thought of it as a story. But now it's true. Our ancient sages actually had experienced all of life. And then
hmm.
he put it all down in a way that was very engaging and saying, look, that boy, the gender fluid
Hmm.
child changed
Hmm.
himself into a man. He's the one who brings that greatest warrior down in the final war that happens in that book.
Yeah. So not only is it presented as normal, it's like he's the hero of the story.
He's a big hero.
Yeah. So it's always been there.
Yeah, I didn't mean to derail the whole thing, but it just connected so strongly with me. That's amazing to me.
So his mother, Edna, reverted back to her maiden name of Bamford, and she and Alan moved back to Lynn County, Oregon, where her parents lived. She got remarried to a man named Bill Barton, and together they moved onto the Bamford's family farm to live with the mother's parents. As he grew up, Alan was much more comfortable presenting as a boy than he was a girl. At that young
Okay.
age, he thought that as long as he wore boys' clothes and cut his hair short, then he could be a boy. And so that's what he
Mm,
did. He thought that was
yes.
the only difference because he's a child.
Yes, yes. That makes perfect sense.
His mother said his desire to be a boy, quote unquote, was foolish, but surprisingly for this era, his grandparents were fine with it, and they even called him
Mm,
their grandson.
Wow. Very open-minded people for that era.
He spent most of his time on the farm and he didn't go to school, so anything he learned was from homeschooling or reading books on his own. He was fascinated by history, especially the Spanish American War and the Civil War. His
Hmm.
grandfather would read current events to him and made him wooden toy guns to play with. As he grew older, he
Nice.
liked to roughhouse with other boys, and he preferred to help with jobs that men did on the farm, like milking the cows and driving horses, rather than working with the women doing all the housekeeping chores. And even when he liked to play pretend, he always cast himself in the male role. So he
Hmm.
was always the father of the pretend family or
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
hero that swoops in to rescue the damsel in distress.
Yes.
He later described this time as the happiest years of his life because he was completely free to express his identity as he wanted
Yes.
to.
Yes.
Also, though, very early on, he started showing an interest in medicine. The only times he ever played with dolls was when he was playing doctor, and they were presumably his patients.
Oh my God, this reminds me of your brother at the age of 4.
Oh, yes.
He used to play with your dolls, but only to decapitate them because
Yes.
he was very keen to figure out how the heck did those eyes open and close. So he
Yeah.
needed to go to the other
He needed
side
to
of
go
the,
inside.
go
Yeah.
inside to check what's happening. And he was trying very hard to poke at the eyes from with his little fingers from inside. This is so hilarious.
And
This
I
is
just
so
come into
hilarious.
my room with the doll in pieces. Like,
Yes, yes,
mommy.
yes.
Yeah.
Scientific curiosity trumps everything.
Yeah. He also became very self reliant. For
Mm.
example, one day he somehow managed to chop off the end of his fingertip with an axe. And instead of running and telling everyone
Oh,
about it like a normal child, he cleaned and dressed the wound himself and then just went back to doing whatever he was doing.
wow,
Yeah.
wow. That is some very high level of self reliance.
Yeah. It's crazy. I was just like, I can't imagine.
Yes,
You know?
even if you're just chopped off a itty bitty piece of the finger, the pain would be unbearable.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of blood gushing around would
Yes.
make me think that I'm going to bleed to death, whether it's true or not. That would be my
Yeah.
response. I would want to be rushed into surgery for a whole bunch of stitches.
I would immediately go running to find some adult and be like, save me, save my life.
Yes,
Yeah.
don't let me bleed out here.
Yeah. Very self reliant when he was a kid.
Hmm.
However, when he was 12, the family moved to Albany, Oregon. And here, Alan had to present as a girl in order to go to school because his birth
Okay,
certificate said he was a girl.
that is hard for him now because he's been allowed the freedom to
Mm.
express his true nature for
Yes.
12 years. And in fact, this is the age when he would be hitting puberty. And
Mm-hmm.
so that would be more traumatic. He's recognizing becoming a boy doesn't just mean
Mm-hmm.
wearing boys' clothes and chopping off my hair. There's more to it. That's very hard.
Yes, it was very difficult for him. His teachers were calling him Lucille and were treating him like a girl. His classmates teased him for being thin and unattractive. And so
Mhm,
all of this made him withdraw socially and focus instead all his efforts on his academic work. And he quickly
mhm,
became the best student in the class
mhm.
because of this. But he still found ways to express his masculinity wherever he could. So by the time he got to high school, he had started to write for local newspapers and also got involved in the school yearbook. And he
Mhm,
also wrote a number of short stories. And he
mm.
wrote all of this under the name Robert Allen Bamford or using the gender neutral A.L. Hart because writing under a pen name was considered normal.
So he was
Yeah.
at least able to recapture some of his autonomy there.
Yes.
And actually, that's a pretty good way to go forward because there was a skit that I saw about this topic somewhere. There was a boy, young child, who was confused about his gender. And
Mm-hmm.
he was being teased all around, being pulled in every different direction. And his father gives him very sage advice. He says, this very young age where you are right now is the time for you to study. Studies is something that you do as a boy or as a girl. It doesn't matter. Gender is irrelevant to what you're doing right now in life.
Yes.
So focus on what is your primary purpose of life right now, and that is to acquire an education.
Yep.
And finally, when gender becomes relevant, you will be older and you can deal with it at that time.
Yeah. That theme will come back around again. So, back to his writing, he often wrote about masculine topics or had his characters doing masculine things, even if they were women. And then during the holidays, he could go back to his grandparents' farm and go right back to presenting as a boy.
Bit of a reprieve there on the farm where he could feel safe and happy again.
Yes. And as you mentioned, now he's, in high school, he's gone through puberty and he's starting to notice girls and he's starting to have fantasies about girls that he's having crushes on, where he's like this successful doctor and husband and the girl is his wife. And he noted that he never fantasized that way about the boys in his class the way that other girls did.
He's oriented completely towards the masculine.
Mm-hmm. In 1908, Allen went to the local Albany College, which is now known as Lewis and Clark College. Again, here he at first had to present as a woman. He was still a very good student, and he took an interest in physics, economics, and philosophy. But he also, because he was presenting as a woman, got involved in setting up the very first women's debate team. So things like that, empowering
Yes,
women.
yes, yes.
He also started dating a classmate named Eva Cushman, and slowly over the years, he went back to his comfort zone of wearing shirts and ties and suits.
But Eva Cushman sounds like a girl's name. So
It
he
is,
was,
yes.
so as he's still biologically a girl, did she know?
Yeah, she knew.
Okay.
She definitely knew. I'm not sure about Eva Cushman's sexual orientation or anything, but she definitely knew. In 1910, Allen had the opportunity to go to Stanford for a year to study. By this time, he had inherited his father's estate and all the money
Okay.
that came with it. And
Okay.
so he was spending money lavishly on his friends and on his girlfriend, Eva Cushman.
Oh, no.
And he paid not only for his own tuition to go to Stanford, but also for Eva to come with him as well.
Okay.
Allen loved the progressive atmosphere of San Francisco and the Bay Area. He would go out, spend the night on the town, go to fancy dinners and operas, and buy gifts for Eva. And he became so addicted to spending money that by the time he went back to Albany College and finished up his degree, he had burned through his entire inheritance and was actually in debt.
That is sad, actually. Somebody should have taught him money management. Why? Okay. Don't get me started on this.
I think spending the money gave him positive attention. People
Yes,
would hang out with
of course.
him and liked him because, and that was such a change from how he was treated in middle school and high school, being picked on and being like the ugly duckling kind of thing. And so now he's like, hey, people love me if I give them gifts and I spend money and buy them dinner. And so he's kind of addicted to that positive feeling,
Yeah, it's not love if you have to buy it.
Yes. So, although Allen wanted to pursue medical school, he couldn't afford it. He worked a number of odd jobs to pay off his debt, and then finally he managed to secure a loan to pay for his medical school. So, in 1913, he was admitted to the University of Oregon Medical School. He continued to excel academically, but on a more personal level, he was very, very unsettled. He slowly grew apart from Eva, but he continued to have relationships with other women. As a medical student now, he tried to research his sexuality from a medical perspective. But at the time, everything related to homosexuality or transsexuality was medically labeled a perversion or deviance.
Yes, deviance. Yes.
Yes. And so this seriously affected him to the point that he actually contemplated taking his own life.
Oh, how sad. Because the message he's getting from everywhere is what you're feeling, your true feelings are not correct. Your true feelings are a perversion.
But luckily, though, he decided to seek help from a professor of psychiatry, Dr. Alan J. Gilbert. Dr. Gilbert started off by trying a number of mental treatments, including psychotherapy and hypnosis, to try and quote unquote cure Alan Hart.
Hmm.
But it soon became very clear that it was not working. Alan himself was also very clear from the beginning that he did not want his masculine mindset to change.
Okay.
So he didn't want the therapy to make his mental state become female,
Yeah.
quote unquote, if that
He
makes
was
sense.
very clear. He's a man. That's not the fix.
Exactly. In the midst of this, Alan graduated from medical school, but was extremely unhappy when his degree was given under the name Lucille Hart, parentheses, aka Robert L. Hart. Because he knew that even though the name Robert Hart was there, he knew that if he presented himself as Dr. Robert Hart, if any potential employer looked at his credentials, they would either discover the name Lucille was tied to him or
Yes.
not discover any proper record at all.
Correct. He's not able to shake that off.
Yeah. And so again, after graduating, he was forced to present as a female to get a job at the Red Cross in Philadelphia. Meanwhile, the psychotherapy isn't working, and so Alan proposes a radical idea to Dr. Gilbert. He says he wants to have a full hysterectomy. And actually, the argument that he used was very clever. So
Okay.
obviously, the reason he wanted to have it personally was to physically be more in line with being a male.
Yes, because now he has recognized just cutting off the hair is not enough and changing clothes is not enough to become a male. And now he's saying, okay, actually change the body.
Yes. But that argument was not going to be persuasive at the time.
Absolutely not.
So instead, he brought forward a eugenics argument that it was medically agreed upon that people with this quote unquote abnormality should be sterilized. That was the belief at the time. And he used that even though he didn't believe it.
Absolutely smart. Very smart.
Yes.
Use your own bad ideas for my greater good.
Exactly.
What a clever, remarkable young man.
Dr. Gilbert was reluctant at first, but he was forced to admit that in their sessions, Alan had only ever saw himself as male.
Yes.
He would refer to himself as male, saying phrases like, the other fellows and I, or what was a fellow to do when he's talking about himself. And he's already able to pass as a male very easily by pinning up his hair under a hat or a wig and wearing men's clothing. He would go around the world and people would think he was a man very easily.
Very easily.
He also knew that Alan was highly intelligent. He's getting top grades at a medical school and showed no signs of being mentally impaired, which might otherwise give Dr. Gilbert grounds to deny the surgery. And so finally, Dr. Gilbert agreed to go ahead and give him the hysterectomy, making Alan Hart the first documented case of a transgender male transition through a sex reassignment surgery in America.
Oh, okay. He broke a big barrier that way. But I am very impressed by how he twisted the existing prejudices to suit his own needs.
Yes, very clever.
Yeah, it reminds me of the movie about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, where she goes to law school and everybody is asked by the professor, why are you here? And she very cleverly says, I'm here because my husband is a lawyer, and by understanding what he is going through, I'm able to support him better.
Yeah, very, very smart. You have to be so smart in these situations
to
get what you want.
Because it's not easy to fight the tide. You have to figure little crooks and crannies through which you can find your own opposite path and pretend that you're going with the flow while actually you are moving in the exact opposite direction.
And I bet Dr. Gilbert even knew what he was doing.
Yes,
and
but how is he going to refute
he's
it?
so smart. Yeah, he's so smart. Like, again, goes back to the highly intelligent argument. He's very intelligent. After the surgery, he legally changed his name from Lucille to Alan Hart. He cut his hair short and he started living openly as a man. He even registered for the draft. So that's how, like, committed he was.
Committed to being male, yes.
He got married to a school teacher named Inez Stark, and he set up his own practice in Oregon. Dr. Gilbert was always referring to Alan as she and her in his notes. So just note that. Dr. Gilbert said, quote, "She made her exit as a female and started as a male with a new hold on life and ambitions worthy of her high degree of intellectuality." End quote.
High praise coming from somebody who basically what you described Dr. Gilbert trying to do hypnosis and this and that. That's conversion therapy of today, right? And even he had to basically wave the white flag of surrender and say, yeah, he's in alignment with his true nature.
Yeah. Unfortunately, though, his troubles were far from over. In 1918, 1 year after the surgery, he was spending some time interning at San Francisco Hospital when a former classmate, Dr. R.A. Jones, recognized him and outed him to various media outlets. The San Francisco Examiner ran with it and published an article titled "Woman Doctor Parades as Man."
Oh, the horror.
Oh, terrible. It was a big scandal, and Alan was forced to give up his internship and return back to Oregon.
What happened to live and let live? I don't
I know.
understand.
These people poking their noses where it doesn't belong.
I mean, what? I don't even understand. What did the other person get out of it? Whoever outed him.
Yeah.
They probably got their only 15 minutes of fame by doing that. A few media outlets would have paid him some money.
I think it was a girl actually who outed him, a woman.
Okay. Very sad, very sad.
When interviewed for a local paper about it, he said, quote, "I had to do it. For years I had been unhappy. With all the inclinations and desires of the boy, I had to restrain myself to the more conventional ways of the other sex. I've been happier since I made this change than I ever have in my life and will continue this way as long as I live." End quote.
Good for him. Stood his ground.
But for the next few years, his life was like a never-ending circus. He moved from state to state, but every time he tried to settle down, he was recognized and hounded, forcing him to move again. Eventually, he decided to go back to his hometown in Oregon for the time being. His family was still there, and so he had some support. This time was deeply distressing to Alan, though, and he reached back out to Dr. Gilbert again to help him through it. Dr. Gilbert provided him with a document asserting that in his professional opinion, Alan was a man, and then Alan was able to use this letter to quiet some of the media outlets.
He was able to shut up some of them at least. Okay.
Yes. And even his mother came to sort of his defense, and she said it shouldn't really matter whether Alan wore a skirt or pants. It's not like he was the first person ever born as a female to ever wear pants. Okay. And it didn't affect his work as a doctor, so what does it matter?
What is the hoo-ha about?
Yes, who cares?
Yes.
He's a doctor. Let him do his work.
Women all over wear pants for riding and for everything else. So what is the big deal?
Why are you so concerned? Yes.
Yeah,
so she is still thinking of him as a woman, but at least she was like, this is not a big deal.
Yes.
Finally, in 1921, Alan managed to get a recommendation from a colleague, Dr. Harriet Lawrence, which helped him get a position as a staff physician at Albuquerque Sanatorium. But the constant moving around had placed a heavy financial burden on Alan, and it became too much for his wife, Inez. She ended up separating from him in 1923 and divorcing him in 1925.
Okay.
But that same year, Alan married Edna Ruddick, another teacher whom he had met while he and Inez were separated. Edna stayed with him and supported him for the rest of his life. And they were a really good match because she was very active in doing social work and working on public health campaigns. So it complemented his work very well.
Hey, Rum, do you know what's going on back there?
Biology working?
Biology working. That's basically the whole show.
We're the co-hosts of the Grow Everything podcast, where we talk to scientists, founders, and engineers who are using living organisms to make everything: materials, medicines, and food.
But you forgot beer.
Of course, beer. New episodes every week.
Subscribe wherever you listen.
Hi everyone, Aarti here. I hope you're enjoying the podcast. If so, and you wish someone would tell your science story, I founded a science communications company called SciComm, that's SYKOM, that can help. SciComm blends creativity with scientific accuracy to create all types of science communications content, including explainer videos, slide presentations, science writing, and more. We work with academic researchers, tech companies, nonprofits, or really any scientist to help simplify your science. Check us out at scikommer.com. That's SYKOMMER.com. Okay, back to the story. In 1926, Alan and Edna moved briefly to New York, to Queens, where Edna was originally from, and they got married there. Alan spent some time working at the Trudeau School of Tuberculosis in New York, and then he went to Illinois to the Rockford Tuberculosis Sanatorium. Edna also got involved doing social work around TB and organizing health campaigns. Tuberculosis, or TB, was a very hot topic in the medical field at this time. It's a bacterial disease that primarily attacks your lungs, causing the patient to develop a fever and cough.
Yes.
And then the disease is spread from person to person when the patient coughs or sneezes. Today we have antibiotics to treat TB, but back then there was no cure. And so the next best thing that doctors could do was try to catch it in the early stages and prevent it from spreading.
That is why you have those sanitariums where people can be quarantined.
But in the very early stages of TB, many patients don't show any symptoms. And so the question was, how could you detect an infection that is sitting quietly in the person's lungs and, not causing them to cough or sneeze, and they're moving about the world?
Just waiting quietly.
Yeah. And so Alan, spending time in these tuberculosis, hospitals and sanatoriums, he's getting more and more interested in the disease. And he's also learning about this new technology at the time called Röntgen rays, or as we know them better today, X-rays. Longtime listeners will remember that we covered Dr. Wilhelm Röntgen in episode 21.
Bringing physics and medicine together now. Yes.
Yes. X-rays had been discovered by Wilhelm Röntgen in 1895 when Alan was 5 years old. And the remarkable thing that, medical people were all excited about was that these X-rays could pass through less dense materials like skin and tissue, but were blocked by more dense things like our bones. And so by the mid-1920s, when Alan is now studying TB, X-rays had already been well established for looking at bones to see fractures and even cancer tumors. And even though the technology was not as good as it is today, X-rays could also be used to see severe cases of TB in the lungs because fluid and scar tissue would build up, and so the lungs would appear kind of cloudy.
Yeah.
So Alan was like, if we can see severe cases of TB, how far back can we push that? How early can we catch it on an X-ray?
Look at it in a longitudinal fashion until you can go back towards when it started.
Yes. And can we actually see it on an X-ray even before the patient starts exhibiting coughing and sneezing symptoms?
Got it.
And so, in order to pursue this line of inquiry, Alan went back to school. And in 1928, he graduated from the University of Pennsylvania with a master's in radiology.
Wait a second. So he graduated with a master's in radiology, and hopefully this time his master's degree has his correct name
has his
on it.
Real name on it. Yeah. Yes. He started advocating for people to routinely get chest X-rays, especially if they were at risk for developing TB. And by studying these X-rays, he was able to spot small abnormalities on the lungs of early-stage TB patients. He could see small white patches on the X-rays where immune cells were starting to build up, or sometimes he would see little lesions or nodules called tubercles, which I'm guessing is where the name tuberculosis comes from.
Yes, probably. Yes.
And then sometimes there were even small cavities in the lungs where the tissue had been destroyed.
And he's able to see all this with an X-ray.
And so when a patient started to show these things on an X-ray, They were immediately put on bed rest and given good nutritious food and fresh air in the hopes of giving the body's immune system the best possible chance to fight off the infection. And in many cases, patients did actually recover thanks to the fact that it had been caught early. So Allen starts to strongly advocate for early detection of TB through X-rays. He started establishing X-ray chest clinics, quote unquote, all around the country because TB was heavily stigmatized at the time. And so by calling them chest clinics and himself a chest doctor, he made it more likely that people would come to get the screenings.
Yes, there is no barrier or stigma to it anymore.
Yes. And I think it still is kind of stigmatized in some parts of the world. If there's even a chance that you might have TB, it's like, oh,
Yes,
stay away from
it's
me.
like, stay away from me because you are silently bringing it into my vicinity. Yes, absolutely.
And so I can totally see people wouldn't want to go and be like, oh, I'm getting a TB screen. Like, you know,
Correct. It's like, then why are you talking to me?
Yes, exactly. So,
yes. Just be quarantined until you get a negative result.
So again, very smart marketing, calling himself a chest doctor and saying, come to the chest clinic.
He knows how, he has that property of water. You know, if there's a big boulder, you don't try to go through it. You just find your way around it, work your way towards where you want to go.
He traveled around speaking at conferences, giving interviews to newspapers, and talking at high schools and universities to students to explain the importance of preventative care. And in 1930, Allen moved to Washington and became the director of the radiology lab at Tacoma General Hospital. He and Edna immediately got involved in the community there, taking part in fundraising drives and educational outreach efforts. But just 2 years later, he left Tacoma General Hospital. Allen said that times were tough and the hospital had to let him go because there wasn't enough funding. But there were some rumors that maybe he fainted at work, and when he was being seen to, his gender situation was discovered. And so we're not sure which one it is, but for the next few years, he did have a very tough time again landing a full-time job.
Okay.
So he's running once again into financial issues. And this was made even worse because now we're in the Great Depression. So to take his mind off of his troubles, he turned back to his old love of writing and turned that into a second source of income. He wrote numerous publications, of course, and science articles about tuberculosis prevention that were aimed to educate the general public. But he also wrote 4 fiction novels that were all semi-autobiographical, drawing on his real-life experiences. They usually featured an underdog doctor character working for social justice.
Yes.
So in 1935, he published his debut novel, Dr. Mallory, which was about a doctor in a small logging town in Oregon who treats poor, needy patients. 1 year later, he published The Undaunted, which was about a gay doctor, and followed his story as he pursued a career in radiology, but had to keep changing jobs because he was being harassed about his sexuality.
Yes.
In 1937, he published In the Lives of Men, which was about a doctor living in a town very similar to Tacoma, Washington, and treating patients during a flu epidemic, which apparently harkened back to kind of his grad school days a bit.
Okay.
Ironically, although this novel generally got good reviews, one critic at the Saturday Review of Literature magazine was a bit more critical, writing that, quote, as a doctor, Hart knows surprisingly little about women, end quote.
That is so funny.
Yeah.
But it could be true because he definitely thinks of himself as a man. That's fairly hilarious.
Yes.
I thought fairly hilarious, actually.
I thought that was pretty funny.
And it's really, in a way, frustrating to him because on the one hand, he's getting into trouble constantly, losing his jobs and everything because he's presenting as a man and being told, no, you're a woman. And it's like, you don't know anything about women. Okay, that's wonderful. It's like neither here nor there.
I would hope that would be one of the highest compliments. Like if I was in his shoes, I'd be so happy. I'd be like, yes,
Yes. That's what
they
I've been telling you
finally,
all
yes,
along.
I'm
I
a
have been
man.
saying this.
Yeah.
This is the story of my life, guys.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
And then in 1942, he published his final novel, Dr. Finlay Sees It Through, which was
Okay.
about a wealthy doctor who moved back to his hometown in the Pacific Northwest to reestablish his practice during the Great Depression.
Okay. So it's the complete arc, basically, where he's
Hmm.
coming back home as a successful, wealthy man.
Yes.
Nice. So these 4 novels that he wrote, were they commercial successes or just well reviewed?
Yeah, they were fairly successful. They were enough to generate a kind of second income that helped him get through the Great
Get through the hard
Depression.
times. Okay.
Yeah, so this did become a genuine second income stream for him
That's
that
what
helped him.
that's what I'm trying,
Yeah.
because he's already being marginalized due to his gender fluidity, and
Mhm.
for him to be so smart, find different ways to cope with his situation, it's remarkable.
Yeah, it made the story even more fascinating to me because I was like, not only is he fighting against, societal norms, not only is he this brilliant doctor, but he's also like a best-selling novelist. So
Yes,
how many more
yes,
like ways can
yes,
you show that you're brilliant?
and a major asset to any society. And
Mm-hmm.
instead, he's being treated like a criminal for dressing up in men's clothes.
Yeah. Okay, so in the middle of all this, in the middle of writing all of these novels, in 1937, Allen was hired by the Idaho Tuberculosis Association to set up TB prevention and awareness across the state. Idaho specifically was a challenge because it was made up of many rural communities. And so it wasn't easy to just go to a big city and set up a clinic and have thousands of people come. People are
Hmm,
scattered all over the countryside.
hmm.
And so, in order to help as many people as he could, he created a mobile TB screening clinic that he and Edna would travel around in. So, basically, like a big van with an x ray
Yes.
machine in the back. And then patients could come into the van and they could close it all up and they could have their x ray privately and safely.
You know, this thought has been brewing in the back of my mind as we have been talking about early intervention and early screening for tuberculosis.
Mm-hmm.
Tuberculosis is not easy to detect for other reasons as well. So, a commonly known bacteria is E. coli, for example, that you grow in labs, and it's a gut bacteria. Most bacteria, their doubling time is 20 minutes. So
Mm-hmm.
if you go to a lab and you try to grow bacteria, you can put like a couple of bacteria in a bit of broth, and the next day the whole thing will be very cloudy because it's log 2. So 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8, and so on very rapidly. And if that's happening every 20 minutes, you can imagine how many bacteria are there at the end of 24 hours. The tuberculosis bacteria, it's called Mycobacterium tuberculosis. And the doubling time of that is 24 hours or more. So
Mm-hmm.
1 bacteria becomes 2 after 24 hours. So imagine if you have got a sample like a deep throat sputum sample, and you're trying
Mm-hmm.
to grow that in a lab to see, does it have bacteria in it? There are so many other bacteria in your spit and in your throat and everything. They'll take over. 1 or 2 lone Mycobacteria tuberculosis, they don't double fast enough and can easily be hidden under the pleothera of the normal flora of your mouth. You can't detect it by looking for the bacteria.
And I'm sure they tried that, which is why it makes it even more remarkable that he's able to see this on an x-ray.
Exactly, exactly. And nowadays, of course, there are other ways. There are immune-based assays. So the tuberculosis bacteria causes this particular immune reaction, interferon gamma or some such thing comes up, and so you detect for that. It's called an IgRA test today. But in
Yeah.
those days, you didn't have these methods.
Yeah.
So what he's doing becomes even more important. And this ability where he goes to the patient in a van rather than having the patient come. And why would the patients come to him? Because if you think about it, they have their own farms, they have busy lives. They cannot
Mhm.
take the time to travel miles and miles, maybe spend 2-3 days away from all their chores that they are doing, all their livestock. They have to leave
Yeah.
all of that.
And the way he's doing it also, they probably would have to come for multiple scans. You'd have to come back
Yes.
one day and he would say, I think maybe I see something. Come back,
Come back in a month and let us check.
yeah, let's
Yes,
check
come back in a
again.
month and let's see if there's a change. Makes a lot of sense.
That said, he repeatedly did lobby politicians for funds to set up a permanent tuberculosis hospital in Idaho, but for
Hmm.
almost a decade, it kept getting delayed for some reason or another. At one meeting with the North Idaho Anti-Tuberculosis Association, Allen, in a fit of frustration, said, quote, "We lost the sanatorium in 1919 and again in 1938 because of
Hmm.
political boondoggling while your
Hmm.
friends and mine were dying," end quote.
I can feel his frustration. Yes.
Yes,
Hmm.
I hadn't heard that word boondoggling before.
No, I have to look it up.
I did. I looked it up, and basically, it's wasteful, pointless work that is done in order to look busy but lacks any real value.
I call it donkey's work, where the teacher gives you a whole bunch of pointless exercises.
Yeah, just to
Just
make
to
you,
keep you busy.
just to
Just to
make you
keep you
seem
busy
busy.
and out
Yes.
of the teacher's head.
So finally, the sanatorium did get established in 1946 using donated buildings from a local college and repurposing a Japanese internment camp. So he's just using resources wherever they are.
Yeah, he's very clever. He knows how to find a path forward.
In 1943, a PhD student at Rutgers University, Albert Schatz, discovered streptomycin, which became the first antibiotic that proved to be an effective cure for TB.
The light at the end of a very dark tunnel.
Yeah. But by this time, thanks to Alan and Edna and over a decade of advocating for preventative screenings, running chest clinics, and training doctors on early detection methods, the rate of deaths from TB decreased by 35 to 40% from 1930 to 1940.
Wow, that is significant contribution. 40% lower death rate.
And his
Remarkable.
methods for early detection were still very crucial to making sure that patients got the proper treatment as soon as possible. Because, of course, like as soon as you have any signs of having the disease, if you can hit it with antibiotic, that makes your life a lot easier and your
And
outcome
the
probably better.
nutrition, quarantine, so others are not affected.
In 1947, Alan and Edna moved to Hartford, Connecticut, where they spent the rest of their lives. Again, here they got deeply involved in their community and in social work. Alan went to Yale, and in 1948, at the age of 58, he got another master's degree in public health.
Okay.
He became director of the hospitalization and rehabilitation for the State Tuberculosis Commission, where he oversaw statewide TB screenings. Edna became a professor at the University of Hartford, and Alan would also go there to visit and give lectures. They would both hold fundraisers to raise money for people who couldn't afford TB treatments. And they also got very into other social issues like destigmatizing mental illness and opposing racial discrimination in housing.
True pillars of the community.
And just fighting against every form of injustice or inequity that they can find.
Social justice warriors.
On a more personal level, Alan finally got access to synthetic testosterone, which had been approved for therapeutic use by the FDA in the late 1930s.
It had been approved as in use for what?
Hypogonadism, for male hypogonadism.
Okay. So the FDA has approved testosterone for some other purpose.
Yeah.
And again, Alan is able to repurpose that and use it for his own purposes.
And by this time, I'm sure like all his paperwork and everything would say he's a male, he's a male. And so
Yes.
he could make the argument that, yeah, I'm a man, but I'm not displaying some of the physical features, which means that
Yeah.
I fall into the category of hypogonadism. And so I
Yes.
need testosterone. Yeah.
Yes, he's able to make those arguments.
Taking testosterone finally allowed him to grow a beard, and he developed a deeper voice, which boosted his self-confidence a great deal, especially when
Yes.
giving lectures and things like that.
Yeah, and also I'm thinking now nobody is going to question him about whether it's
Mhm.
male or female, or if some random lady from his past comes back and says, "Oh, I know this was a lady before." He has a beard waving at her. So
Yes. Yes, he's truly fully made the transition at this point. And
good for
he
him.
lived this way until his death in 1962 at the age of 71. He died from heart failure. Following Alan's wishes, after his death, Edna had his body cremated and scattered over the Puget Sound, where he and Edna had vacationed during the summer. She left most of their estate to the Medical Research Foundation of Oregon and established the Alan L. and Edna Rudnick Hart Fund to support leukemia research, which was
Okay.
how Alan's mother had died.
Yes, nice.
Edna, also at Alan's request, destroyed all of his personal papers, hoping to keep their private life strictly private. However, in 1976, so 14 years after Alan's death,
Mhm.
an author, Jonathan Ned Katz, found Dr. Gilbert's notes where he was writing about treating a patient named H. And he
Yes.
pieced together from like birth dates and significant events that H was Alan Hart.
I see. I see.
At the time, Jonathan Katz didn't believe in transgenderism, and he thought that Alan and Edna must have actually been lesbians.
Okay.
So he reached out to Edna hoping to get, more information about their private life, but Edna refused to be interviewed. One, because it was too painful to dredge up all of this, gender identity
One more
controversy
time.
around
Yeah,
Alan
they
again.
have suffered enough.
Yeah. And two, because she was offended that Katz was wrongly portraying Alan and therefore herself as a lesbian.
Correct.
But throughout the 1980s and into the 90s, people referred to Alan again as Lucille Hart in biographies and events. Even the Oregon Gay and Lesbian Rights Political Action Committee, which was called Right to Privacy, started hosting a Lucille Hart dinner, calling Alan Hart a famous lesbian from Portland, believing that Alan chose to masquerade as a man in order to avoid stigma from society.
Oh, insult upon injury. Okay.
Even after his death, we're still
After
fighting
his death,
about it.
even after his death, it's
Yeah.
not done. Okay.
But in the 90s, trans advocates started pushing back, saying that Alan never once showed any signs of thinking of himself as a woman or as a female.
In fact, you have the reviewer of one of his
Yeah.
famous books saying
Yeah.
doesn't
He doesn't know
understand what
anything
it
about-
means to be a woman.
Yeah. In 1995, a group of trans people formed the Ad Hoc Committee of Transsexuals to recognize Alan Hart. They approached the Portland chapter of a group called the Lesbian Avengers. I love that name.
Good for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to avenge this kind of insult. Absolutely.
Yes. And so this ad hoc committee on behalf of Alan Hart presented their case to the Lesbian Avengers, saying that Alan Hart was in fact a trans man and not a lesbian. And so with all the facts laid out, the Lesbian Avengers agreed. And so together they teamed up and they tried to negotiate with the Right to Privacy PAC to stop having this Lucille Hart dinner and calling Alan Lucille Hart. And
Got
when
it.
that didn't work, they went to the dinner and other events with banners and buttons that said his name was Alan Hart, and they
Got
were
it.
protesting.
Yes.
This worked, and the following year, the Right to Privacy PAC changed the name to the Right to Pride Dinner. And then in 1999, the Right to Pride group dissolved, and most of the members joined the Basic Rights Oregon group. And the next year, this group hosted the 17th annual Hart Dinner.
Just the heart
Which
dinner.
is fine.
Which is
Yeah.
wonderful. treat them as human beings first, right?
Yes.
Whoever it is, you, me, Alan Hart, it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter. Treat each person as a human being first.
Yeah. And importantly, Jonathan Katz, the one who kind of kicked off all of this by calling Alan a lesbian, also
Yes,
backtracked on this belief and said he would not categorize Alan that way today.
got it. Okay.
And today, most writers and biographers do refer to Alan as a trailblazing trans doctor whose work in TB saved countless lives. And so that's the
Yes.
story of Alan Hart.
Amazing. Amazing. Not only did he contribute both medically and socially during his lifetime, but also continued to contribute after death. It took some time, but we are at a better place today because of all the confusions that arose and then got cleared up because of the way he lived his life and clearly showed everybody that he was in no way thinking as a woman ever. His true soul was
Yeah.
male.
And I liked this story a lot because I know, like, you and I, as gender normal people, we have sometimes a hard time putting ourselves in the shoes of trans people or gay people. But this really laid it out so beautifully and so clearly and just really helped
Absolutely.
to develop my own understanding, you know? So I
Yes.
thought it was a really important story.
I absolutely agree because it's confusing to me as well, especially as more and more divisions occur. It's already a marginalized group, the LGBTQA, it's already marginalized. And then
Mm-hmm.
they have so many subdivisions within them that it's very confusing to me. And they have so much to fight against. So there's a lot of misconceptions that are presented as fact to
Mm-hmm.
people like me who don't know much to begin with. And now we are wading through all that information and misinformation to kind of try to sort out what is true. And Alan's
Mm-hmm.
life is a very clear to kind of understand more clearly where they're coming from and how valid their thought process is.
Yeah.
And not only that, whether you agree or don't agree doesn't matter at all because they are contributing a lot more to society than you ever could with all
Yeah.
your judgmental preconceptions and notions of how life should be and how many genders are there and all of that preconception doesn't contribute as much to society as Alan did in one lifetime.
Yeah, it's like if you can't appreciate him for being male, like
Male,
appreciate his
female, whatever.
contribution, like
Yeah,
yeah,
forget. Yeah,
forget
y-
that.
yeah,
Appreciate the
forget all
fact
that.
that he
Yeah,
saved so many people's lives.
correct. Just look at him as a human being and go from there.
Yeah.
Why can't we just do that to everybody? Look at everybody as a human being and allow each human being to achieve their full potential so
Hmm.
that they can contribute to the greater good of mankind and of society.
Yeah.
Alan had to fight so much to align with his true self. What if he was allowed full reign to this? Like, call yourself whatever you want, be whatever you want, wear whatever you want, just do what God put you on earth to do.
Hmm.
How much more could he have achieved?
Yeah. Already I was just astounded by the fact that it's like he got a medical degree. He got 2 master's degrees. He wrote 4, best-selling novels. Like, oh yeah, he also fought against social injustice for himself and for others. It's like, oh my
Amazing,
goodness, amazing guy.
amazing, amazing
Yeah.
guy.
Thanks for listening. If you have a suggestion for a story we should cover or thoughts you want to share about an episode, reach out to us at smartteapodcast.com. You can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky at Smart Tea Podcast and listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. And leave us a rating or comment. It helps us grow. New episodes are released every other Wednesday. See you next time.